Mr. Netanyahu, thanks very much for joining us here on the BBC. You have suspended negotiations now with the Palestinians. What's plan B?
Well, it depends on President Abbas, the Palestinian leader. He made a decision. He made a decision, instead of choosing to embrace peace with Israel, he made a pact with Hamas, a terror organization committed to Israel's destruction. He can have peace with Israel or a pact with Hamas. He can't have both. I hope that he decides to abandon this pact with the terrorist Hamas and then come back to the peace with Israel.
So under what circumstances would you speak again with President Abbas's group of Palestinians?
When they decide to abandon the course of terror and do what Anwar Sadat did. Anwar Sadat said, he made a decision. He came, Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt, who made the first historic peace with Israel. He came here and he said, no more war, no more bloodshed. Now, what message did the Palestinian president give us the other day? He told us more war, more bloodshed, more terror, anything but peace, because he embraced the very people who are committed to our annihilation.
So they have to drop their pact with Hamas?
Absolutely.
To talk to Israel again?
Absolutely. As I can tell you, and I want to be clear about this, I think sometimes there are moments when clarity is needed. As long as I'm Prime Minister of Israel, I will never negotiate with a Palestinian government that is backed by Hamas terrorists who are calling for our liquidation.
But looking at it realistically, they've tried before to mend this split. They haven't succeeded. There's still many differences between them. The chances are it may not well work.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
Wouldn't it be better for you to be able to speak to a Palestinian side as well, which is united? Because if they ever made a deal with you, they'd be better placed to deliver it.
United for peace? Absolutely. United for terror and the destruction of Israel? No. I mean, if Al-Qaeda has a portion of the population in a certain country, you don't say, well, I'm going to negotiate with Al-Qaeda when it wants to bomb London, New York, or Washington. You don't do that.
Now, Britain negotiated with the IRA and finally managed to make a peace agreement. And Britain continued to negotiate with the IRA even when they were taking action against the British.
Yeah, but
Isn't that the sensible way to try and make peace?
But I don't think the IRA was ever committed to the destruction of Britain, to the eradication of London, to killing British citizens everywhere they see them. This is what Hamas is all about. Hamas, in its own constitution, says, wherever you see Jews, kill them. And in fact, they've been practicing what they preach, because they fired from Hamas-controlled Gaza. Hamas terrorists have fired over 10,000 rockets and missiles on Israel's cities, on our schools, on our children. They're not only preaching our destruction, they're practicing.
But Mr. Abbas is not doing any of those things. He says he wants to continue with negotiations. But isn't it a fact as well that people negotiate peace and peace deals with their enemies, not with their friends?
Sure.
You're going to have to get over that.
Sure, you make peace with an enemy, but only when your enemy decides to veer away from war and terror towards peace. That happens all the time, and it's a good thing that happens, and we're hoping that it would happen. But here's what happened with the Palestinian president. He was waiting on the shore of the Rubicon, of the stream that he had to cross for peace. And a few days ago, I knew that something was wrong, because he said, I would never even discuss the idea of recognizing the Jewish state. I personally had said a few years ago, and I was the first Likud prime minister to say that peace requires the mutual recognition of a Jewish state and a Palestinian state. Now he said that he wouldn't do it. But what he's done now is not merely not cross the waters. What he's done now is to take a giant leap backward, and he's run into the arms of the very people who seek not merely not to recognize us, but to annihilate us. That's incompatible with peace.
The fact is, though, that Mr. Abbas does not want to annihilate Israel. He wants to work with Israel. The PLO recognized Israel as a legitimate entity, a legitimate state, a long time ago. And the issue of recognizing Israel as a specifically Jewish state, you have 20% Arab population here, is something for them which is a different issue.
Well, I wasn't talking about a Jewish state in the religious sense, but as a nation state of the Jewish people, just as he asked me to recognize the Palestinian state as the nation state of the Palestinian people. Palestinians can go there if they choose. Jews can go to Israel if they wish. This was the basis of a real peace. Everybody understands that. But he refused to do that. Nevertheless, I had hoped that he would do it one day. But what he's done now is something entirely different. He's embraced the a preeminent terrorist organization calling for our destruction and working for our destruction every day. And it just doesn't wash. You can't talk about peace with Israel and at the same time embrace the people who are set on annihilating Israel. You have to choose one or the other.
Now, I've been talking to the Palestinians today about all of this, and a lot of them are saying, look, the Israelis never had their hearts in this. Mr. Netanyahu never wanted to make a deal, and now he's simply grabbing on this and running with it because it gives him an excuse to get out of it.
Well, here's what I did. You can repeat this ad nauseum, all these characterizations, and cast Israel as the heavy or me as the heavy. It's not important. Test facts. What did I do for peace? I gave a speech to my constituency, and I told them we're going to have two states for two peoples. That's a first for a Likud prime minister. Then I did something that no prime minister in Israel ever did. I was the first prime minister to freeze construction in the settlements. And then I did something else, which I think is the most agonizing decision of my 3 tenures, and that was to release these terrorists who murdered Israelis, all for the sake of engaging in peace. And I ask you, what did President Abbas do? What has he done? He's done one thing. He embraced the terrorists who are out to destroy the state of Israel.
Palestinians say that you continue to take their land, to build and extend settlements, that you're not serious about a peace process, and that is why they're moving to some internal unity and applying as well to international organizations. And in their view, they feel they can change the balance of power and get a stronger position for them in any future negotiations.
Well, you know what I said to them? I said, okay, settlements is an issue, borders are an issue. Let's suppose you got what you wanted, everything you wanted. I want to know what's on the other side, on the Israeli side. Are you recognizing the state of Israel? Are you willing to end the conflict with it? Will you stop your demands to flood it with Palestinians? Tell me that. That's what I mean when I say recognize the Jewish state. And he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. You know why? Because that's the core of the conflict. The core of the conflict is the persistent refusal, decades upon decades upon decades, of the Palestinians and some others in the Arab world to recognize the Jewish state in any boundary. And what has happened yesterday was a tremendous reverse for peace, because the Palestinian president not only refused to recognize the Jewish state, he embraced the very people who call for the outright destruction of the Jewish state. I hope he changes his mind. I hope he reverses course, because I think it's important for peace, certainly important for Israel. But I want to tell you, Jeremy, I think it's important for the Palestinian people, because they have to choose. They can't have it both ways. They can either move forward towards peace or backwards towards Hamas. Unfortunately, yesterday, President Abbas moved away from peace and went backwards, giant step backwards, to the arms of terrorist organizations.